Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to COD Zombies HQ. In the next few months, we will get the conclusion, the finale, the ending to the over decade-long Aether Zombie storyline within Treyarch Call of Duty games. And looking at a few lessons over the last few months, we know that the way this story ends will impact the way the entire Zombies franchise and Aether story is viewed for time immemorial. Just look at the way the consensus around the Game of Thrones finale has really impacted many fans' views on the show in a negative way. A lot of the criticism surrounding the ending of Game of Thrones was that it seemed like everything was rushed to completion and that had a negative effect on the actual storytelling. Well, now in Zombies, it seems like we're pretty much in the same position that Game of Thrones is in their final season. Treyarch has just 2 DLC maps to wrap up the Zombies storyline, and not only that, recently they were put on an even worse time crunch as a result of Treyarch being switched to be the primary developer of Call of Duty 2020. So in this video, let's do some old-fashioned theorizing, looking ahead as to 3 possible scenarios for how Treyarch will decide to end the Zombies storyline. So we'll be discussing cutscene details, story implications, things like that. If you do end up enjoying the video, definitely do hit that thumbs up button down below, and I'll also include timestamps to various cutscene scenarios as the pinned comment on this video. So let's kick things off with cutscene scenario number 1, what I'm calling the Swerve. Now this ending scenario largely revolves around the unknowns surrounding the Revelations ending cutscene. If you think back to the cutscene itself, we are presented with events in chronological order, right? So we have Primus in front of the house talking to Dr. Monty. Monty is starting to wipe them from existence, but he gets an idea. We fade to white, and all of a sudden we have Primus on top of the mound in Origins, staves in hand, victorious against the Apothecans. But remember the Swerve storytelling maxim that the order in which we're presented with things is not necessarily the order in which they occur. The head of Zombies at Treyarch, Jason Blundell, may have wanted to present the Revelations ending cutscene as a straightforward timeline where Monty sends Primus back to the Great Battle to continue the cycle over and over again so he maintains his power. But of course, that's the narrative that's inferred and not explicitly told to us when we view the Revelations cutscene by itself. Now let's assume Jason Blundell does something that he's known to do, and that's wants to kind of swerve the community, right? Pretend he's going one way but actually have another thing happening, and it seems to me that the best swerve that Jason Blundell could be planning right now has to do with the end of Zombies and the ending cutscene for Revelations. Remember the words at the end of that cutscene, the end. It was not that the cycle continues, this is the end of the story. What if they actually mean that in its entirety? That somehow through a series of events that we're going to see in DLC 3 and 4, that this scene doesn't show what we think it does, that this isn't Primus victorious after the battle with the Apothecans that we see in the Zombies timeline, that this is actually the end of Zombies, the end of DLC 4 for Black Ops 4, Primus victorious over Dr. Monty himself. And that during the DLC 4 ending cutscene, they're going to call back to this moment that we saw here in Revelations. Jason has his gotcha moment, and we all go, shoot, I should have known he was going to do that. Now, in terms of if I actually like this sequence of events as an ending to Aether, I mean, it's okay in the sense that we get a swerve, right? It won't really be a swerve if we're predicting it and it actually happens, but the community itself kind of gets a swerve. It helps explain the Revelations ending cutscene, which was hated at the time of its actual release several years ago. We get to end the zombie storyline with our characters victorious. They might swerve us even harder and go that these guys, that's not Primus, that's Ultimus. Ultimus will prevail, Primus will fail, but the fates of Ultimus and Victus aren't really discussed in this kind of ending. We would assume that there might have to be some kind of sacrifice in the battle with Dr. Monty, that one of these crews actually might go down for the count, no revival, they're bleeding out. If you want me to even go greater in depth into this series, I have a dedicated 2-video series on this exact subject that I'll include as a card, so you can click the eye icon in the upper right hand side to click off to those videos if you want to watch them. But now let's continue on to end cutscene theory number 2, which we'll just call the house. And like our last theory relates to the Revelations ending cutscene, the finale of Black Ops 3 Zombies, let's go back even further to the ending of Black Ops 2 Zombies, the Origins ending cutscene. Now, if you're around in the Zombies storyline at that time, that cutscene has a totally different context if you don't know what's coming after it, where people genuinely thought that this cutscene meant that everything that happened in the Zombies storyline up to this point was simply the figment of children's imagination. Now, of course, now we know that not to be the case, but at the time, that's the way the cutscene kind of intends you to feel about itself. Well, as we secure the souls of our 4 characters in the Black Ops 3 Zombies to protect the children in the house that we see at the beginning of Revelations, that whole branch of the storyline, basically the entirety of the storyline in Black Ops 3 up to that point, isn't really explained or talked about in the Revelations ending cutscene. We don't see the kids we see at the beginning of Revelations ever again, which leads me to believe at the conclusion of Aether we might finally get some answers as to that aspect of the storyline, and I've seen some actual theories from people that think that the ending cutscene to DLC 4 will involve our 4 characters waking up as children in a world in which the zombie apocalypse doesn't occur, where in this final cleanse timeline things occur differently from how we know them to occur during the cycle, and that the ending cutscene will imply that as a result of Primus, Ultimus, and Victus's victory over Dr. Monty, so that it's quote-unquote smooth sailing for the rest of our 4 characters' lives, while they still get involved and embattled in conflicts and world wars, they don't have to fight the zombie hordes like we know them to throughout this series. In terms of if we like this ending or not, I like it in the sense that it kind of gives some conclusion, some finale to the events that took place throughout Black Ops 3 Zombies that will help kind of finish up and explain that thread of the children in the house and things like that. But when we move on to scenario number 3, it's what I call my perfect ending. What I personally would like the ending cutscene to DLC 4 to be like. And I've thought about this for quite some time and I've decided it's almost like a combination of the first 2 scenarios. If you can imagine, at the beginning of the ending cutscene, we're at the location of the great battle where we assume DLC 4 will take place in, and after the conclusion of the inevitable boss battle of that map, cutscene triggers, and we get to see our 4 characters banish Dr. Monty, or whatever antagonistic form he takes. There's always rumors, of course, that Monty and Shadow Man will be able to somehow fuse to create this mega boss or entity that we have to battle against, but the cutscene will begin with us destroying that entity, similar to how the ending of the boss battle in Revelations looked like, but in cutscene form, after some brief dialogue acknowledging that Monty and the Shadow Man are gone for good. Our 4 characters appear together on the mound that we see at the end of the Revelations cutscene. Nikolai or Richtofen says to them, "You know what we must do." The staves go up, the callback to the Revelations ending cutscene, so Jason will get his gotcha moment. But what we didn't see at the end of the Revelations cutscene is that moments after that cutscene cuts off, boom, blue portals appear like we see at the end of Blood of the Dead, and Primus vanishes from the time and location of the great battle. As the scene would fade back up again, we would be shown scenes from the lives of our 4 characters as regular people. Nikolai and his wife in the house that he wanted to build, that he talked about in Blood of the Dead. Takeo in a traditional Japanese home, at peace after the war. Richtofen working in maybe some kind of like hospital or something that to signify that he didn't actually take part in the experiments for Group 935. And Dempsey, still a military man, but he's training new recruits. The whole idea here is to show our 4 characters not as heroes, not as Primus, but as regular people, which I think is a really positive and kind of close the book ending to the story, but it always has to be bittersweet, doesn't it? And the bitterness would come from the question, do they know what they did? Do these characters that are now portrayed as regular people know what they accomplished? Do they have memories of defeating Dr. Monty, of all their adventures through time and space? Forget when they traveled through those portals for the last time. Sure, they may have saved the world and themselves, but at the cost of not knowing that they did such things. It leaves us, the audience, in a position of power at the end of this story, where we can debate whether the characters at the end of the story know what they've done or not, but ultimately we do know what they accomplished in the story. I think that for me personally, that sequence in its entirety doesn't have to take that long. That can all be accomplished in like 2.5, 3 minutes of actual cutscene time. We've seen what Treyarch is able to accomplish in terms of complex cutscene environments and motion and things like that in the Dead of the Night cutscene, which I think is probably the most technically impressive zombies cutscene we've gotten so far. So we know they can accomplish complex stuff within these ending cutscenes, and an ending where we see our 4 characters as normal people, but we don't get the answer to the question of do they know what they accomplished, leaves room for interpretation within the cutscene, making it more interesting, but makes it so that you don't feel like some kind of information was left out, or that you're still grasping for more scraps of information. It's an interesting question, but it's not essential to your understanding or enjoyment of the ending. But hey, that's just my personal best case scenario, my personal best ending. I would love to hear yours down in the comments below. I'll read each and every single one, you can be sure of that. And if you can't really think of your own personal best case scenario, I'd love for you to comment on the 3 options we provided in this video. And hey, let me know if you think that my personal best ending is garbage or if you think it's great. I spent a lot of time thinking about what it would be like. But that wraps up this video, guys. Be sure to give it a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel for more great zombies content to come. We're in for a raucous ride to the finish here in Aether Zombies, and I can't wait to bring all the news to you guys as it happens in this fantastic game mode. So until next time, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you with another Zombies video sometime soon. Peace.